Not every council member went, I think two council members went and I went. But in saying that, we do, if, for budget purposes, I think we talked about, figuring out what we're gonna budget for as far as TML or Washington DC, or a combination of things. So I do wanna hear from the council as it relates to travel expenses for one or both of these events. Our focus over the next few months is to balance the budget. James is gonna show you how much we are out of balance right now. We're gonna, again, address our needs and then focus on maintaining a conservative budget. Yeah, we're gonna try to provide the services the city needs. This year, in a nutshell, I feel pretty good. Financially, we're doing pretty good. We're not great, but we're good. We're able to do, I think we're gonna be able to do some things that I've been a little hesitant to do in prior years, simply because we have our audits out. One, we know we pretty much know where we are. And I think from a revenue perspective, we're doing that. So expenses we've been able to keep in check, but the things that we need to consider also future is that the ARP money has helped us out, but that money's running out. So that's all I have, as far as the presentation. But James is gonna go over any numbers. Do you have any questions for me right now?
Let me just state one thing real quick. Thank you, City Manager James, before you get started. This compilation sheet is what you guys have provided me on your wish list, and just get your pencil out, and I'd like you to mark these things. These are things that you indicated are priorities or desires that you'd like to see. And just, and of course, some of these are kind of lumped together, so, we couldn't break down just a lot of different things in there, but for an example, that city administration has already really addressed these particular items in our current budget. Again, this is just a draft, so, we've got a lot of work to do before. But roads, street repair is in there, so make a check by that. Economic development is in there. Staff raises in there. Playground equipment is addressed. Drainage is addressed. Complete annexation is addressed. Work more with the school and county, we're already doing that. Reduce crime, that's part of the budget. Approve the comprehensive master plan, we're gonna work on that. Additional personnel, that is addressed. Festivals, that's addressed. Promote grants, you heard them in there, we still gotta address that. And then establish the chamber at the bottom, and of course, we've already celebrated the 4th of July. So there is a number of things that have been addressed and are kind of low-hanging fruit, and some of the things that some of us wanted or a majority of us wanted. So we're all gonna get a chance to put your input in things particularly that you wanna look at, and then each of the department heads is gonna make a presentation on their wish list items too, and explain to us the why and the how behind that's gonna benefit the city. So just want to again let you guys know that a lot of these items are addressed to some degree in there, and will be for your consideration as we walk through there, and you can ask more questions. But anyway, again, thank you guys, Brett and James and the rest of the staff for how hard you're working on this. James?
Good evening, everyone. So in the handout on page 13 is the prelim summary for the general fund. So the revenues are looking to increase by about $789,000. The expenditures are increasing as well by about $1.725 million, with a difference of about $975,000. So that's the general fund. And then you have behind that you have your budgets to actuals, your current budget for 22-23, and then what's been spent through March 31st. So we have March 31st is because that's what we closed out so far. And then on page 15 you have your revenues for your utility summary. So for utilities, it's actually the revenues are increasing about $520,000, and the expenditures are increasing by $204,000. The difference is about $313,000, but the total difference between the general fund and the utilities fund is about $660,000 increase.
So it's total revenues over expenditures, basically. $660,000 more expenditures than our revenues. So we're short $660,000 if you look at the total. Again, what's been requested and we put in the budget, so in a nutshell, there's cuts, just like any other year. It's trying to figure out what cuts there needs to be, and then, we feel confident we could keep a lot of what we're requesting, but we know we're not gonna request, we're not gonna get everything. I mean, we're not gonna, everything we're requesting, we know that we're not, gonna get everything we're requesting. So, I think the staff is aware of that, so James and I will be working on making the adjustments and cuts, and then getting you a proposed budget. But again, part of that, what I would like between here and July 31st is your input as to what, knowing these, smaller details, what you feel is stuff that we can cut or shouldn't cut or should cut. That it would be a good idea whether now or between now and July 31st, to just let us know. Let us know what, I kind of highlighted for you what's in the preliminary budget. And on y'all's end, we'd like to get some input.
Council, you have any specific questions?
These particular numbers, Mr. Hernandez, we're not even looking at grants or anything might be coming in within the year and calculating those into these numbers. How are we,
No.
No?
Now, part of what we need to consider is, I'll give you an example. We're applying for this COPS grant. The COPS grant, we're applying for, I think Chief's requesting 4 officers and 4 police vehicles. Part of what we're gonna look at is figuring out, making the assumption of, well, if we get 2 officers and then we get 2 officers funded through this grant, there's still gonna be, we're gonna have to put in, some dollars, but not as much as we would say for all 4 officers. I think, Chief, do you remember the grant amount?
75%, sir.
75% of salary.
For the first 3 years. But we have to retain the officers for the final year, which was the 4th year, and then after that, the city can determine if they want
Is it 3 officers, Chief, or 4 officers that it funds?
3 officers.
So it'd be 3 officers. Yeah, it's for 3, it's for 3 years, 75%, and so what we're doing there as council is we have to make, we're gonna make an assumption, to at least fund maybe 2, and then look at how we can maybe fund percentages, the 25% of the remaining officers. Same can be said with equipment. I would love to purchase as much equipment as possible, but those are questions on that end, as I think I mentioned to the mayor, is, we have to be prioritizing the equipment. I mean, I think everybody here is requesting things that they need, but it's almost like what's more need, right? So that's what we're gonna look at on our end, is making those priorities. And again, you as a council determine the priorities to a large extent. So that would be something that we ensure.
And when we look at the numbers in the administration of it and the incentive or the increase we want to do with the employees, about 60 employees, what are we utilizing as far as criteria to determine these numbers?
That was we're still using Mr. Worley and his group, and so we're using their weighted scale, their table. So that's where we actually got those recommendations from Mr. Worley. We went back and part of it is a challenge simply because, from a market standpoint, we all feel it, I think, is there, every employee is important. I mean, even office employees or whatever, but we're really feeling it with Public Works as far as the folks that are out there in the field, and our police officers. And again, not to discount anything that any of the office staff is doing, but it is where I think the market is at, as far as where a lot of the increases were at. I mean, and quite frankly, law enforcement in general is having a tough time filling positions. I had a little conversation with Mr. Trevino, council member, and I think it's with every agency that I can think of that a couple of contacts that I have, it's tough to fill the position. And so I don't know if pay is maybe the ultimate, maybe it sways some people our way. But that's kind of where we are. I mean, that's.
Have we had the opportunity to meet with TWC as far as the programs that they've been rolling out, as far as, they have a huge amount of funding, and 3 different programs that they've been rolling out to bring in, to tackle the employment market, and ease some of the funding from the organizations, from different organizations. So, I mean, that's an option that I think I would wanna
Yep.
have them come in and do a presentation to the city. And you're looking at, some of these people matching their salaries. And I know it's useful a lot for the street department and public works department. That's something that might help us within this budget year as well.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and I think part of the TWC, I think they've come and approached us on a couple of things. We have not, quite frankly, haven't taken advantage of that. But we need to look into that. The other thing we talked about today, we'll see how this goes over, but I think it would be beneficial to all of us, is all the agencies are struggling, particularly the school district, city, the county, maybe even the hospital, I don't know, to hire folks. And maybe the Workforce Commission can facilitate a workshop or some sort of a job fair for all of us. Although we may be competing for the same people, but it's something to consider, because it's hard to find. I know that there's shortages with, I can say at least 2 or 3 of those agencies.
Yeah.
For sure.
What I like about it is the fact that they're picking up the slack from everything, from your background checks, from the drug testing to everything. They handle everything, all the liabilities, everything is being paid on it. And there's 3 different programs out there. You're looking at the youth program from 16 to 24, about $15 an hour. And then you're looking at the adult, 18 to some odd, that are coming out of the market, that are unemployment, single parents, like that, and all these, that particular program will match. Let's just per se, it's a clerk position at 30-some odd thousand a year, where they're gonna match that salary, and they take care of all of that. So really, the entity would just handle, or HR would just handle just submitting the payroll to the, and we handle the training and the vets, which it's a huge asset and a huge,
Helps.
help for the program. And then you have your disability, people with disabilities.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, and the only other thing I have is the debt services. I provided you a handout. It's just a summary of the scheduled services, the due date, and what's gonna be paid throughout the next year. I mean, there's a couple that aren't on here yet. So once we get to Hard Rock and all that, it should be, the debt service should be about $2 million. So, so it's this handout I put on for y'all.
Council, so just, again, kind of understand where you are. This is preliminary, and know the numbers that we indicated today, net, when you both together, we're in the red about 660,000. We will balance the budget. I mean, this is just preliminary. We've added everything that we need, and teeing off what Fred indicated is, we're gonna provide what we need, but we're gonna be as conservative as possible. We're gonna meet the needs of the city. The other thing I wanna stress in the 2.5 years that I've been involved, we've not raised ad valorem taxes, and we've kept a flat budget. We've been at right about the $12 million mark. This budget, because remember, we're doing about $2 million in debt service, and if you add both these proposed numbers, now the revenue side, to understand, Fred, James, you guys are pretty comfortable with the conservative aspect. It's still showing a pretty good increase in revenue on the general fund side, subject to our willingness to raise the utility rates a little bit in advance of what we thought. That's gonna give us a pretty sizable increase there in order to meet the needs of the city. But, we feel very comfortable with where we are with the revenue side, that, of where we're gonna be in that regard. Again, from a conservative perspective, we hope that we generate more than that. And then there is things that we can do, lease equipment instead of buy it, doesn't require quite a big capital outlay, and so there is options at our disposal. But the other thing I wanna keep you guys in, two things I wanna ask y'all to please do, is study these numbers, just make some notes, be ready, because we're fixing to get an awful lot of information to y'all. And then the things that you want to see, you need to be prepared. And then questions when, police and Hector and those come to make their case, be prepared to ask questions. How are we gonna justify this? How is it gonna benefit the city? Those kind of things in that regard. But the other thing to keep in mind is we have a pretty ominous responsibility with our annexation out there in the sewer and the water line that is yet to come. And so that's going to, we're hoping and praying that we get some grant money with a pretty big debt forgiveness. And we're holding out for that, and it's out there. Communities are getting it, so we're gonna swing really hard to try to do that. But if it doesn't happen, we still have to make that happen. And it's gonna be a sizable, it'll add to this, a pretty big number to the bottom line. And so that revenue has to come from somewhere. And it's not a if thing, it's we have to do that because that's what we promised we do when we do that annexation. So those are things to keep in mind. Fred, correct me if I'm wrong, but that payment for the annexation, won't probably be 23, 24, Fred, most likely.
It won't be in there.
Yeah, it won't be in other words, this budget cycle. It'll most likely come in the following one is when that'll come. But we need to prepare for it today because it's coming. Something to think about. Okay. Thank you guys again very much, council. Any other questions? This is good data. James did a lot of this. He created this amazing spreadsheet on Excel with a lot of data in there that is really going to be beneficial in our studying and understanding this. So again, hats off. I'm very glad that we have you on staff and a lot of numbers. So don't let it make your eyes glaze over. It's numbers some guys do. All right, that's all. Fred, anything else?
No, sir. No, sir.
Council, again, any other questions? All right, well, with that, we'll move on to the next item. New business, all items are action items. This is gonna be item 7A, discuss and consider resolution number 2023-0701, authorizing city manager to apply to the Texas Parks and Wildlife for the 23-24 Pearsall City Parks Outdoor Project. This is an action item. I'll ask for a motion, please. Motion by Councilman Trevino, second by Councilwoman Trevino. At this point, I'll turn the floor over to the city manager.
Yes, Mayor and Council, as I mentioned, this is a grant that we're looking to apply for this year. Actually, I think that the application is due August the 1st, and it'll be for $750,000. I'll verify that with EMC, but that amount is for $750,000 is what I understand. So we're asking for the approval of this resolution, and then the matching funds, assuming we get the grant, will come. We're asking that any proceeds to match will come from hotel occupancy tax.
Fred, you want to go over what all this is going to do for us?
Well, part of this is an outdoor project grant. So part of what we're looking at is looking at any improvements for outdoor facilities. So what we're looking at and what we're going to convey to EMC, the folks that are helping us prepare the grant, is focus on. We're going to focus out at the sports complex, walking trails, lighting, improved parking spaces, improved parking. We have actually some quotes for some lighting for the fields. I think we have a quote from 2 or 3 years back. But what I'm talking about is lighting around the walking trails and extending and improving the walking trails. There's a plan that dates back to 1998, I believe. I can't remember. The complex, I think, was funded through Texas Parks and Wildlife funding, or at least a portion of it was. And so what we're going to look at that existing. It had an existing trail or extension of that trail. So we're looking to maybe replicate that and include that as part of the request for these funds. So slowly but surely, as you start making improvements out there, I think it'll look better. But that's ideally what we're going to use the proceeds for, assuming we get this grant.
Fred, can we do the bathroom repair and the concession stand repair with this?
I asked, I need clarification from EMC. There's a list of things that we can that can qualify. I don't know if that's considered an indoor facility. I have to check that. And I actually had that question today. I don't know if this qualifies, but I'll check and see if, I think we have some estimates of the council members for restrooms and out at the sports complex and Polo Patino. And we also had, estimates for